and Stalin getting along. Don't screw this up, George. If you break the alliance, we have lost this war. And the guy in the middle, that is Omar Bradley from the Great State of Misery. You can clearly see on his face the shock of OMG. Ike, have you lost your freaking mind? You can't put the fate of the world in the hands of George S. Patton. This is a recipe for disaster. Alright, we got a pretty good setup. I know this video is long, but we just got to finish World War II. There's no hurry to finishing World War. There's no hurry to finishing the videos. You can break this up all you want. And we're going to go back to the crazy map view at this point. Perfect. So, Patton takes control of our forces after the Kasserine. The British are pushing Rommel this way, and Patton's attacking this way. No matter what Rommel did, Patton was there to stop him perfectly. If Rommel threw a left, Patton was there to block him. If Rommel threw a right, Patton was there to block him. If Rommel threw all his forces down the middle, Patton was there to block him. And it starts hitting the media, it starts hitting the press about what a genius George S. Patton is, and we start squeezing the Germans out of North Africa. The Germans retreat this way, and so we start, with the British, start squeezing them up to Tunis and out of North Africa. Rommel reports back to Hitler that North Africa is a lost cause. Hitler says, I'll send you 300,000 more soldiers. Rommel says, don't. That'll be 300,000 more lost German soldiers. And Hitler, in all his military brilliance, says, I'm going to send them anyway. And so he loses 300,000 more German Italian soldiers to Patton. Patton looks like the hero that's going to save the world at this point, and he's relishing this. And as the press asks him, how'd you do it, Patton? How'd you do it, Patton? He just throws his feet up on his desk, lights a giant cigars, and says, well, it's easy. I read the book. Hopefully it's clear to you at this point that, remember, Rommel wrote the book on tank warfare. Patton knew every move he was going to make because Patton read the book those 20 years between World War I and World War II. Alright, so let's finish this up with the next move. One good little Patton story happens right about here. As all the forces are driving together here in the final battles of North Africa, Patton's in his Jeep with his driver. And the driver's doing as fast as a Jeep would go in World War II, not real fast, 40 or 50 miles an hour at best. And Patton's giving the driver directions. He's a general. He's telling the driver exactly what to do. Saying turn left here, turn right there, go north, go east. And the more they drive, the further and further and further and further away they are from the actual battle sounds. Until they come to an empty field at twilight. Nothing but cricket noises. No battle for miles. Patton jumps out of the Jeep, throws his hands in the air, and proclaims, this is the battle. And the driver is shaking his head because everybody knows Patton's a little bit nutty and has no idea what's going on. But here's what Patton was doing. If you go back to your world history, in the Second Punic War, where the Romans were fighting for their lives against the Carthaginians to determine who is going to dominate world civilization, a Carthaginian general named Scipio had taken elephants around up through Spain and attacked Rome up here from the north, where he antagonized Rome for 10 solid years. To draw him back, the Romans sent Scipio Africanus to Carthage directly, which forces Hannibal to take a boat ride back and fight the Battle of Zama against Scipio. And the Romans win the Battle of Zama. And so Patton is standing in the middle of the old battlefield of Zama. The Romans then return for the Third Punic War, where they destroyed the city of Carthage, destroyed every building in the city of Carthage, killed all the men, took the women and children as prisoner slaves, plowed the fields for a 50-mile radius around Carthage, and sowed the fields with salt so that Carthage could never again rise to be a competitor to Rome. Of course, Patton believed he had been there. As a reincarnated soldier, he had been there, and now he's relishing the battlefield. But the significance of this goofy little story is, what in the world were Carthage and Rome fighting over in the first place? Dominance of world civilization, which at that time was the Mediterranean Sea, and if you wanted to control the Mediterranean Sea at that time, the trade going east-west, you had to control the island of Sicily. So, Patton may be as crazy as an outhouse bat, but he realizes the same things that controlled the Punic Wars for world civilization, the same strategies are still at play in World War II. Rommel is going to retreat to the island of Sicily, and he's going to set up defensive lines here, so that when we invade Sicily, he can stop us. And so Patton turns to his knowledge of ancient battles and comes up with a very, very easy way to defeat Sicily. It's really like a football play. He wants the British to strike directly at the German lines on Sicily, and then the Americans can make a sweep, an end run around the line, and take the rest of the island of Sicily, jumping to Italy and driving up into the soft underbelly of Germany. It's a simple plan. It's a brilliant plan. Eisenhower wants to make one change. Remember, Eisenhower's goal was to keep the Allies getting along with each other. England, by this point, we're talking 1943. England's been suffering in this war for 39, 40, 41, 42. And, we're getting into 4 years of England suffering, desperately fighting the battles of Britain, the battles of El Alamein. England is tired. America is rather fresh in this war. So Eisenhower just orders Patton to change roles. Let England take this piece, let them make the sweep and the end run, while the Americans do the hard fighting and the heavy lifting. And this infuriates Patton because he wants the glory. And so Patton being Patton, he decides, I'll have my cake and I will eat it too. The British were led by a dude named Bernard Montgomery. Patton attacks here, focusing on the end while Montgomery slips by, and Patton has to fight his way down this German line. You attack from the end of a line so that you can push them over like dominoes. And so the way this plays out, geographically, Patton needs to cover two sides of a triangle, while the British only cover one side of a triangle. And Patton has to fight his way through to do it. And in a very Patton kind of way, when the British finally roll into the city here, they find Patton sitting on the steps of the city hall. He has covered two sides of a triangle faster than the British can cover one side of a triangle. Patton's very proud of himself, and he's done this great military achievement. He's pushed his soldiers to the maximum and done some brilliant military things. But Eisenhower is furious because this makes the British look stupid and slow and embarrasses and humiliates the British. And so Patton's done exactly the opposite of what he was supposed to do, which threatens to break up the alliance. But Patton does something worse on Sicily. Patton had a habit of visiting military prisons after battles. He knew he pushed his guys to the absolute maximum extent. His guys nicknamed him Old Blood and Guts. He got the glory by spilling their blood and guts. And he knew this, and he knew what he was doing. And so to show some contrition, he would visit hospitals after battles, and he would visit with the soldiers. He'd hold their hands, he would kneel down and pray with them in the hospitals. He would find a soldier, who's suffered some bullet wounds, kneel down beside him, hold his hand, and pray for him and his recovery, and pin the Purple Heart to his chest. The Purple Heart is the medal that nobody wants. You only get a Purple Heart if you're wounded by the enemy in combat. Then you go to the next bed, and the guy's maybe lost both his legs, and Patton would start just weeping at that point, praying with the guy holding his hand, pinning a Purple Heart to his chest. The next guy has no arms because he picked up a hand grenade and threw it away to save all his friends. But, the hand grenade blew up and it blew his arms off. And so Patton can't hold his hand, but you can kneel by his bed and pray and cry. And this manly man, Patton, would be outright wailing, crazy crying by this point. He'd find a guy that was burned over 90% of his body. And can't pin a medal on that guy's chest, but you can pin it to his pillow, and you can write a letter home to his family. And Patton is so moved by this point, he's just wailing, crying, that the ugly cry by this point. And the media's around, the press is around, they're impressed by Patton, but it's like really weird that this manly man is crying, but at least he loves his soldiers. But then he comes to a bed on Sicily, looks at the fellow, and says, well, counting 10 toes there, counting 10 fingers, you got your arms and legs. Claps his hands to see if the guy can hear. The guy can hear just fine. Holds up his fingers. Can you see? How many fingers am I holding up? The guy can see just fine. And he finally says, well, soldier, what is wrong with you? And the soldier says, I got scared. Now, certainly, combat fatigue, PTSD, that's all real things. These guys were suffering by this point. But this, to Patton, is the ultimate insult to every other soldier in that hospital and every other soldier in the field. This guy has broken his honor and broken his courage and hidden in a hospital while others fought, were wounded, or died on Sicily. And so Patton sort of jerks the guy out of bed, grabs him by the lapel, the collar of his hospital gown, and slaps him across the face. Again, twice, slaps him right in front of the cameraman, right in front of the doctors, and orders the guy to return immediately to the front. Well, this hits the American newspapers. And picture every mom in America who's already worried about their sons going off to World War II. Now their general is potentially slapping them. And it embarrasses Eisenhower and America. And because Eisenhower's main job is to hold the alliance together, he has to fire George S. Patton. And that leaves us in a really bad spot. We were just starting to make progress in the war, and now our great general is fired. And that, just before the 1 hour mark, is where we need to leave this video in suspense.